We good now?
Yeah, I can see you loud and clear.
Okay, good.
How you doing today?
I'm good, and yourself?
Doing good, man. Doing good, Baba. Doing good. It's a pleasure to have you on here.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
yeah, so as you know, my name is Tarami Reedus, and like we spoke on the phone earlier, I am in Houston, Texas. I'm a djembe player. I'm a musician
Uh-huh.
of different African diasporic genres. And I have this brand called Drumz Uhuru, and the whole purpose and goal is to elevate the voices and the experiences of musicians and culture workers in and of African diasporic traditions, as well as those crafts themselves. And you're a legend in the djembe space when it comes to America and djembe in America. You were there,
Uh-huh.
right around the beginning when it was first, when djembe at least was really first beginning to pop off in the US. And, I
Yeah.
want to bring you on here to share your story through the djembe, share some of the history of djembe in America as you've lived it, witnessed it, and experienced it. And, share your lessons, your stories, and your insights. So, yeah, can you give a brief introduction of who you are, where you come from, and what you do?
Okay, I'm Bradley Simmons, originally from New York, Brooklyn, New York. And now I live in Durham, North Carolina, and I teach at Duke University in the music department. And the courses that I'm teaching over there is Afro-Cuban uh, Afro-Cuban percussion music, which is focused on congas, bongos, timbales, claves, anything that's dealing with the Afro-Cuban diaspora. And then I teach a West African music course, which is to focus on the djembe.
Wow, that's amazing. So
And
how did you,
I started playing in 1960 when I started drumming.
man, that's dope. That's dope. 1960, wow. And how did that come about?
Yeah.
How did that happen? Like, when was the first time you saw
Okay.
Jimmy?
Yeah. Well, actually, what I started out doing was I was in a tap dance class at there was a dance studio in Queens, New York called the Gloria Jackson School of Dance. Actually, then it was called Leroy and Gloria Jackson School of Dance. So I went there to, a friend of mine was going there, and he said, they had a concert, and I went to see the concert, and then these group of drummers came on inside the concert, and I went home and told my moms that I wanted to join that studio. So I started out as a tap dancer first, and then the following year I started drumming. Um, and then I've been playing ever since, nonstop. So
Wow,
that's how it came about. Yeah,
wow. Tap dancing. That's cool. That's cool.
yeah. Because tap
Um,
dancing and drumming is the same thing. It has both of them have rhythm. You're
right.
just doing one with your hands and the other one with your foot, with your feet. So it's the same thing.
Yeah, so you were able to pick up the language real easy, huh?
Real easy. Yeah, yeah. At that time, my I started out on congas. Djembe wasn't there yet. It was here in the United States, but wasn't nobody playing djembe back then, other than Logic Kamada. He was the only one playing because he was the one that brought it over here. Okay, but congas was the main instrument at the time, and so most of us started playing congas. We didn't start getting into the djembe until like the mid 70s, the early to mid 70s. So a whole decade went by without playing the djembe other than Logic Kamada. And then there was a few other drummers that was playing in the 60s. It was Sonny Morgan was one. Um, Lucas Shea Wiles was another one. And there's a few other, but not a whole lot. Wendell Hayes, uh, but it was real thin. Mostly congas, but then the djembe picked up heavily in the 70s. That's when we all started. Once we started to see the ballet companies, the Les Ballets Africains, the Senegalese ballet company, and the Mali ballet company, that's when we started to gravitate towards the djembe. But that was a different kind of drum then, and we wanted to get more into it and see what this drum was really all about.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. I understand that djembe, as a new instrument to the West or to the Americas, presented a different type of like it resonated heavily with the people here. And could you talk about how the djembe was resonating with, with the community, with Black Americans, African Americans, in a way that was different than, sort of the Afro-Cuban scene that was already happening in New York at that time?
Well, okay. The way it resonated towards the African American people, during that time. And like I said, it wasn't a whole lot of people playing that instrument back then. In 1964, 65, there was the New York World's Fair. Okay. At the New York World's Fair, the Les Ballets Africains was performing there. And so during that time, all of us used to go to the fair and go to the African Pavilion, because that's where everybody played at. All the dance companies from here and the Les Ballets Africains was performing at the African Pavilion. Okay, inside that pavilion, and it was mostly on the outside, Nana Denny Zulu's company was performing, Chuck Davis' company was performing there at the time, and the Les Ballets Africains was performing. Laji Kamada was there. He had already been to the United States because, he came here in 1959 into the United States. And that's when the djembe was brought to this country in 1959. And he only came here he came here with the ballet company, and he went back home after they did the show at the Apollo Theater. And then he was summoned to come back to the United States to put a group together. When he came back, that whole idea and program got canceled, and it fell through. So then he was stranded, and he couldn't get back to Guinea. So Chief Bey, was one of the elder drummers, helped him get his green card to stay here. When Laji was staying here, that's when we started to see more of the djembe, because he was always performing somewhere. And so we was following him around, this guy playing. And then Olatunji came out with his second album in 1966. In 1966, the More Drums of Passion album came out. There was one section on the album called Wasalu. That was the song that Laji played by himself. And so when we bought the album, we listened to it, because a lot of the drummers on there was from the United States, and they were also our teachers. If you look at the front cover of the album, all those drummers that on that particular album was the ones that we studied under.
Okay.
Laji and Olatunji was the only ones from Africa that was actually playing on that album. But Laji had his djembe there, and when he did that song Wasalu, we said, "Hey man, did you hear this Wasalu song by this guy named Laji? And what kind of drum was he playing?" We didn't know what kind of drum he was even playing. We just heard somebody playing something different by himself, and this drum had a unique sound, and we all wanted to know what was this guy doing and what kind of drum was he playing. So when we found out, and this was in 66 when that album came out, we all started studying that album and listening to him playing. At that time, djembe was hard to get. I mean, you literally could not find a drum. You had to really be at the right place at the right time when the djembes came over. Okay? What we didn't know, that when the World's Fair was going on, they had a whole crate full of djembes, that they wouldn't open up that crate until one of the drummers from Queens, his sister was working at the African Pavilion, and he told her to tell the manager to open up that crate so that we could see the drums that was in there, because we knew they were there, but they just wouldn't open it up. But when he finally opened up the crate, that's when we saw the djembes, and that's when the djembe came out.
Wow.
That's when the djembes came out, and so people were starting to buy them. But at that time, the djembes was only $40.
Dang.
Yeah, that's it. Somewhere between $20 and $40. That's how much the djembes cost, brand new. Because see, what
Wow.
happened was what it was, the Les Ballets Africains brought the drums over to sell, but they didn't want to take the drums back. Okay, they wanted to leave them here because they didn't want to take them back to to Guinea.
Yeah.
So when they left them here, the drummers, once they found out what was in there, everybody started buying them. And at $40, you can't beat that. And you try to buy a djembe for $40 today, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, no.
You're gonna start at $600 and up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So and there's two drummers. Well, Sonny Morgan had one, and Yomi has one, and he still has that drum today in his house. Okay. Now where the rest of the drums is at, they just disappeared. Nobody knows where they at. But that's how the djembe got here, and then it started. Once we started playing more on the djembe and doing dance classes, that's when it started to gravitate people towards the drum at that time. And it was just African Americans back then playing.
Yeah.
It was real. It was real thin. There wasn't a whole lot of people playing djembe at all, because they didn't really know what the drum was all about. But once we found out, then it was on. And it's been like that even till this day. Now the djembe, in some sense, got a little lost in terms of the integrity of what the drum is really all about, because now it's everybody and anybody's playing it. And you had to see the ballet companies then to understand how that drum really spoke. The language, or how the way the drum came out as the language, because the drum has a language, and you had to play it a certain way in order to make that drum speak. They don't play it like that today. If you've seen, there's a videotape of the Les Ballets Africains in 1968 at the Union, was United Nations. I don't know if you've seen that video yet. Have you seen that?
No, not yet. I need to check it out.
Oh yeah, go to YouTube and type in Les Ballets Africains at the United Nations 1968. Famadou was the lead drummer on that video. If you look at that video, you will see how the djembe is really played. The djembe, and listen to the notations on the drum. Those drums were not tuned as high as they tune today, because they didn't need to tune them that high. Okay, it wasn't about how high your drums sound; it was how well your technique was. But your technique had everything. Your technique had everything to do with how your drum is going to sound. Okay, so their drums were much lower in sound versus what they playing today, much higher, way up there. So yeah, if you get a chance, check out that video.
Yeah.
It's called the Les Ballets Africains at the United Nations in 1968.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely check it out.
Yeah, you see that, and you'll have a whole nother perspective on what the djembe is really all about. Okay, and those drums, when they laced those drums, they wasn't using the kind of ropes that we using today. Those drums was sewn together with strips of skin.
So when you say sewn, they had that drum head sewn
onto the drum,
onto the wood.
onto the wood. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, because you had to. That's how you lace them. You know, now is a no hold system, and that was created by an African American here in this country.
Yes,
The
sir.
way, the
Chief
way,
Bay.
the way, Chief Bay, that's right. Okay, don't let them tell you anything different. I was at his house when he did it. Okay, and he was showing it
Dang.
to us. He was showing it to us. He said he put the djembe on in front of him, and he put the conga drum right there in front of him, right next to each other. He said, "I can turn into that drum into this drum, where you will never have to put your drum on the heat again." I said, "Okay, Chief. Well, how are we going to do this?" And then he put one together, and that's how the djembe has his style. Its style of lacing the drum today came from an African American, James Hawthorne Chief Bay. That's his real name, James Hawthorne. Okay, and he was an opera singer. Check that
Oh,
out.
wow.
Yeah, he was a profound opera singer first, and then he became a dancer, and then he became a drummer.
Okay, wow.
Chief Bay was in the original cast of Porgy and Bess in 1955
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With Leontine Price, Cab Calloway, Maya Angelou. She was in that show, um, and a few others. But he was in the original cast of that show, and he was singing as an opera singer first. There ain't too many drummers can sing opera.
Yeah. That's heavy.
Yeah, but he was the one that did it. So in terms of the djembe, again, we got to go back to 1959. Okay, from 59 on, that's how the drum he got here by way of Laji Kamada, by way of the Les Ballets Africains.
Yeah.
Oh, and then that same year in 59, the Les Ballets Africains went to California. They went to LA to shoot the movie. Um, oh, what's the name of that movie? With Charleston Heston. I can't think of the name of the movie right now. It'll come to me. But they shot a movie out there, and the Les Ballets Africains performed in that movie. The drummers was Laji Kamada and Ada Fontoure. They were all in that movie. Ben Hur, that's the name of the movie, Ben Hur. So you can look that up. You're just gonna have to wait 3 to 4 hours before you actually see them, because they come on near the end of the movie.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they come on near the end of the movie. But you see them though; they in there performing.
Yeah.
And so that's when he went back. So after that movie was over, that's when the ballet company went back to Guinea, and Laji went back there, but they summoned Laji to come back to put a group together, and that's how the djembe, got to the United States permanently.
Mm.
Okay, because he
Okay.
got stranded because he couldn't get back home after that,
Yeah. You
and
got
so he
stuck in New
decided
York.
to stay. Yeah, he decided to stay here, and once he got his green card, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
his style of playing is totally different from what way people are playing today. Because I used to play in his dance in his company. So and then we would go by his house and he would show us some parts, show us certain technique on how to play that drum to make the drum speak the way it does.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there over time has been a development of, I guess, African American speaking and I guess what you could say somewhat of our dialect on the djembe as it's been here a while? At least through the performance and through the dance class sort of lens.
Yeah, there are some drummers here that make that drum talk, that are still playing. One of them, well, he's not playing anymore. Well, there's two of them that's not playing anymore. Jaleel Sharif was one. Walter Ince was another one. And now Gregory Ansel, who is still playing, his hand technique makes the drum speak the way it's supposed to speak till this day. He lives down here in North Carolina. So there are some drummers that that can make the drum talk. Then there are some that's like, I don't know what y'all doing, but there it is. But there are a few drummers out here that can play. Yeah, Atiba Rory is one. He lives here in North Carolina. There's a guy named Muhammad Kamara. He used to play with the Percussion de Guinea Company. He was one of the drummers for Percussion de Guinea. I think he lives in Florida now. But he's still playing. His son, Abu Kamara. You know Abu?
I haven't met him, but I know of him through Instagram and social media.
Right, yeah. He lives in New York. He's in New York, but Muhammad is his father, who used to play with the Percussion de Guinea Company.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are some drummers that's still playing, that are playing today, that are keeping the traditional sound of the djembe going. Not a whole lot, but there are some that are still keeping the traditional sound.
Definitely. How do you see djembe music and traditional African diasporic music going forward in terms of still serving the community, given the changes in society and technology that we are witnessing today?
Well, the djembe is not going to die, which is a good thing. Okay.
Oh, yep.
Because Chipe always said, never let this thing die. Never let it die. So it's still going, it's just different versus the way it was when we was coming up. The good thing is the fact that it's not going to die. Now you just got to find the right people to sit with to teach you how to play this drum the way the drum is supposed to speak. Otherwise it can get a little crazy out here. So what you want to do is look at the old tapes, look at the Les Ballets Africains, look at the Senegalese Ballet Africain, and look at the Mali Ballet Africain. Okay. Now the Mali company is different. Traditionally, the way they play djembe with sticks. Okay, like the Saba drums. Because Mali and Senegal are real close to each other. The lead drummer in the Mali ballet, he would play his drum with a stick in hand. The other accompaniment drummers would play with their hands, but the lead drummer was playing with the stick. Now, they don't do that too much anymore now. Everything is all hand technique. So, a lot of changes have developed over the years in reference to how this drum is being played today.
Wow.
The drum, let's see, the drums are bigger. They got drums now, you can buy one that's 15 inches in diameter, which traditionally, that's what they used to play bigger djembes back then, especially in Mali and Senegal. They would play big drums.
Yeah.
Now, it depending on how you tune it, is how the drum is going to talk and sound. Then you have the smaller ones, the 13 inches, 13 and a half. I wouldn't go too much smaller than 13 and a half. There are some 12 inches that are good, and that's primarily a lead drum only. But I suggest people to look at the older videotapes of the older drummers and look at their hand technique and listen to how they sound, how they can make a low sounding djembe sound high, just as high as the one you tuning them up today. And that's all done by your hand technique. Logi he was a master at that. He would have a low djembe and that drum be sounding so loud and high, you can hear it 10 blocks away. That's just how he was. And there was another guy, an African American guy. His name was Ronald Love, aka Balagoon. That you know Ade Love.
Yeah, I
He,
haven't met him, but I've heard of him.
yeah, he just recently passed away. Well,
Yeah.
his father was the guy. His father's name was Ronald Love Balagoon. This guy was man. He was a big dude, but he had hand technique that would knock everybody over. And he's almost like to the point where you couldn't sit next to him too long because the way his technique was, it was so loud and clear and sharp that it give your ears a headache. So yeah, man, this guy he was really good. His name was Balagoon. That was Ade's father. So if you've seen Ade play, you're looking at his father playing. Okay,
Okay.
yeah. And so
So
you got drummers that are still keeping the tradition up, which is Joe Barnes is one of them. Gene Osborne is another one. And Gene Osborne spends a lot of time in Guinea now. So, um, as I tell a lot of the younger drummers, follow them. Look at what they're doing because they're holding it up right now.
yeah. So you're a professor at Duke University. What
Yeah.
do you want your students to take away from your teachings and your lessons?
I give a lot of lectures over there. And what I want them to take away is the knowledge of whatever drum or whatever instrument you come into the class to study, whether it be congas, whether it be djembe. We play shakere in there too as well. And we play, shakere, clave, and timbales and bongos. So what I want them to, to walk away with, even if they don't play afterwards, after they graduate, at least they have the knowledge of where all this came from. By way of Cuba, by way of Africa, by way of Haiti, by way of Brazil. That's what they need to know, that this drum has a strong impact in other countries outside of Africa, outside of the continent and outside of Cuba and all the other areas and the United States.
Mm-hmm. And how did that opportunity come about for you to be a professor at Duke University?
Okay, I was doing lectures at NC State, North Carolina State University in Raleigh. And the guy who called me up, what happened was he was teaching a world music course over there. And his focus was on Korean music. Now he went all the way down the list on, different genres of music from different parts of the world. But when he got to Africa, he got stuck. And he didn't know what to talk. He just didn't know what to do with that. So he asked somebody if he knew do you know anybody that can teach anything on African culture and African music? So my name came up. I don't even know who he spoke to, but my name came up and he called me up and then I started doing lectures in his class. I did it for like 2 or 3 years in the spring semester. And they wanted to, put me on permanent, but they couldn't get the funds together. So he knew of another ethnos musicologist at Duke University who was from South Africa. And he talked to her about it. And then she wrote a proposal. And that's how I got in. And it was only supposed to be for one semester. And so it went from one semester to another, and then they just finally said, well, let's just go ahead and put him on permanent. Call it a day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
because the students kept coming back and forth. They wanted to take the class. So they went on ahead and lined it up. And it's been 28 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, so I was reading, Baba Kojo Bay's book, Djembe Revolution.
Uh-huh.
And he talks about he shares a little bit of light on his time in Guinea with Famadou
Hmm.
Konate, and touches on the spirituality of Djembe. And I want to ask you what your take is on the spirituality of Djembe, like in a traditional sense, if you have experience with that, what you're able to share, but also in sort of the new world context, as we have come to experience it here.
Right. Okay. What people really don't look at in reference to the drum is that the drum is a spiritual instrument. It's what they call a fetish instrument. Okay, because the drum didn't start out on the stage. It started out in the village first. So in the way they played it in the village is a whole lot different than the way they played in what they call traditional playing. Okay, because you have ballet style, you have village style, and then you have the traditional style. Okay, ballet style is more of a performance way of playing. They when the ballet companies came together, they started doing stuff on stage, and they would put their groups together, go and hibernate for 6 months in the mountains and practice, and then come out and perform. Traditional style is what we playing today. Uh, Village style, you ain't gonna hear that unless you go to the village. That's the only way you're gonna
Right.
hear village style playing. You got to go there and listen to the older guys playing how they play over there. So it's a slower pace, and their drums are not tuned nowhere near the tightness the way they tune the drums today here. They just don't have their drums up that high. Okay. Um, it's just a style, whatever style you want to play and what you're listening to a lot. Most people, well, since the ballet companies hasn't been coming out in the past 5 to 10 years, you're missing out on that right now. Now I understand that they're starting to come back. They're gonna be coming back within a year or so. So if that happens, it's good that everybody needs to go see them. It's just to see what they're doing. Now, when we was looking at the ballet company, we looked at Famadou. Famadou was the main guy for the Les Ballets Africains. Lamine was the main guy for the Senegalese ballet company. And then there was a 19-year-old kid who was the lead drummer for the Mali Ballet Company. I had never seen nobody play like him. This guy was an acrobatic drummer.
Oh,
Yeah, this dude was an acrobatic drummer. He would do flips in the air with his drum and come down and land and start playing at the same time.
dang. Like he had the drum strapped on him and was doing flips.
They had the drum strapped on him and he was doing flips. And when he come down, he started playing. Boom.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can look that up on YouTube. Just look up the Mali Ballet Company. And the old ones, it's back in the 70s.
Mm.
When we saw that, they used to come, they came to New York one time in 1971. That was the only time they came. And we saw this guy. And I was with a friend of mine named James Cherry. I said, James, keep your eye on that guy over there. Watch him. Because he's doing something that is miraculous.
Yeah,
He's
that's amazing.
flipping it out and playing his drum at the same time. Who does that? So when we saw that, and then I think we went backstage after the show was over and we talked to this kid because he wasn't 19. I said, how did you manage to pull this one off? I had never seen nobody do that. I seen Farmer do some neat tricks on the djembe. He would come out on the stage and spin around like a top and stop on the dime and start playing. Boom. But I ain't never seen nobody do no somersaults flip in midair and come down and play. And that's on the Mali Ballet with the Mali Ballet. Actually, I have that videotape of about 2.5 hours long. So what you're seeing today is uh, more drummers playing for dance classes or drum groups doing a performance every now and then. You don't see what we saw back then because none of the companies are coming over. And that's the only difference. You know, so you have to you got to find it, then you got to follow it, and then just look at the drummers that are really playing the drum the way the drum is supposed to be played, and just understand what that drum is really all about first, and that's the spiritual side of it first. Okay, after that, then it becomes an instrument, but it's definitely a fetish instrument first. I tell anybody that. I tell all my students, look, this drum here is more than just a drum. It ain't just a piece of wood and the skin covering over it. There's some stuff on the inside. Oh, that's the other thing. There were times back then, let me say back then, that the djembes back then had juju on the inside of the drum. And the juju that was inside the drum was mainly for that particular drummer who was playing it. So a lot of times, those guys would sell their drums because they wanted to get back home and they needed some money. But the drum didn't do you any good because the skin would always break because that drum was spiritually connected to that particular drummer. One guy told me they had a drum like that. His name was Djembe. He told me the story. He said, man, we had this drum here, and every time we put a skin on it, the skin would break. I said, just as soon as you put it on? He said, within 2 or 3 weeks later, the skin was gone. I said, man. So they had to take the drum to a santero. And the santero had to clean the drum out. Whatever juju that was in it, they had to clean it out in order for the drum to be played. And so when they got it back, everything worked out okay. So the skin would last a whole lot longer on the drum. But every time before that, skin would break with the inside of 2 or 3 days to a week long. It was going. They was changing skins like every week.
Wow, Baba Bradley, our time is about to end. I want to thank you so much. How can people get in